I know everything there is to know about the shrimping business. I don't like sand. It's rough, it's coarse, and it gets everywhere. But we're still going to be taking on Impact Man next. And his stage, it's not actually that sandy, but I mean, I guess it's dirty, so I mean, it's probably a better excuse to call this episode I Don't Like Sand, or whatnot. Of course, this doesn't exactly look like sand, but this is the Mississippi King welcoming y'all back to more Let's Play Mega Man 11. And, one thing that I didn't really explain in the last episodes was that this game actually introduced a few new pickups. First, you have the gear pickups, and these cool off your gear system. So, when that happens, like, the small ones cool it off a little, and the big ones cool it off a lot, so they give you more time to use them. Meanwhile, they've actually introduced sort of a roulette pickup, which it like shuffles between several different pickups, and the one that you collect when you pick it up, like the one that shows up when you pick it, is the one that you'll get, and so you can use that to your advantage. Well, actually, you see the trick with the roulette things. They can also be abused. You can abuse the speed gear to get it that way. I'm showing off the Scramble Thunder because, oh boy, it is ridiculously powerful. Like, it takes out the Pikmin in 2 hits. I'm not sure how many hits it takes out the, Salmonella Joes, or whatever they're called. The ones, and one thing that's interesting about this game, it actually has kind of a callback to Mega Man 2 with some of the, Podcaster Joes, or whatever they're called. They'll actually be piloting mechs in this game. Well, some of them will be, not all of them. But that's interesting, and these mechs don't exactly work the way they did in Mega Man 2, but they're similar enough that they do still remind me a lot of Mega Man 2. And of course, I don't really mind a callback to Mega Man 2, it is my favorite Mega Man game. Oh, by the way, watch this. Watch how quickly I destroyed that guy. Just 2 shots with a powered-up thingy. With a powered-up block dropper. Now let's actually fight this guy legitimately this time. So I went back in to get some more footage to show the fight legitimately. I just wanted to show off how the weaknesses can utterly destroy mini-bosses. And this mini-boss is actually fairly tricky without its weakness, without using the block dropper powered up. But with the block dropper, it goes down like 2 seconds or so. You can take out most of them in just a few seconds using their weaknesses. It's ridiculous. Seriously, it almost breaks the game. This part is interesting because, like, the stage is pretty hazardous, and it once again rewards some good platforming. One of the things that's interesting about Impact Man's stage is that you actually run into Impact Man while you're in the stage. In fact, we've already run into him at this point. The things that, like, charge out of the walls from diagonal, from up and down, and, like, horizontal, yeah, those are actually the Impact Brothers. They're called Kui Ichiro, which is the black one, and the oldest, which is, I take it, the least responsible, and the middle child is the second most responsible, and the youngest is the most responsible. This is all in the gallery. That's where my information on the Robot Masters comes from. And so, the middle child, I believe, is colored orange. Well, they're like Kuiichiro, Kuijiro, and Saburo. And the youngest is, I forget all of their colors, but I know the oldest is colored black. This is actually pretty significant that this game includes a Robot Master that actually appears before the fight. But this isn't actually a first for the entire Mega Man series. This does occur with, like, Jet Stingray in Mega Man X4, and also with a Gigabolt Man Award. That's a stupid name, by the way, in Mega Man X8. Speaking of which, I finally got around to playing it. And, since we're here, I may as well, like, try and show off some Rush Jet. It's mapped to its own button, which is fantastic. It's pretty convenient. Although this does come at the cost of another awesome feature. Screw you, Impact Man, I don't even like sand. It's coarse, rough, and irritating, and it gets everywhere.
A construction support robot built to withstand the toughest working conditions, Impact Man mainly works on the foundations of construction projects. His body is made up of 3 independent pile driver robots who call themselves the Impact Brothers, Kuiichiro, Kuijiro, and Kuisaburo. He never hesitates and always rushes to action. His motto is just push through. So once he's accepted a job, nothing can stop him from smashing through in record time. Usually Kuiichiro, the oldest of the Impact Brothers, takes control when they're combined into Impact Man. But sometimes the youngest, Kuisaburo, steps in when his big bro is worn out. Meanwhile, Kuijiro is the unruly middle child, and can't be trusted to take the reins. Manufacturer, Nakaum Heavy Machinery.
It's worth noting that Nakaum Heavy Machinery, by the way, is actually the same manufacturer as Blockman. So yeah, if y'all are wondering why he shares a drink with, like, Impact Man, well, why Blockman shares a drink with him, it's because they have the same manufacturer. That's kind of interesting. Another interesting trivia fact is that Impact Man apparently reads the same magazine that Blast Man actually writes for. I'm well aware that his weakness is actually the acid barrier, but I'm using my Mega Buster because, again, I think these fights are really fun to take on with the default weapon. Because they're so engaging, they're so fast-paced, and they never get boring because of all of the different attacks and how fun it is to dodge them. But anyway, the pile driver is awesome because it basically serves as an air dash. Like, you can actually use it in midair, and, like, it'll damage anything in front of it, and for bigger enemies, and ones that have blocks, it will, like, latch onto them and then bounce off, then explode. It also does that if it hits a wall. So, it is a bit tricky to use, but once you get the hang of it, it's actually a pretty awesome weapon. So, now that that's out of the way, we'll be tackling a Tundra Man next, but before we do that, I want to stop by the shop to get these spike boots, because that basically negates the ice physics for Tundra Man's stage, which I don't really mind, but still, it's nice to have them regardless. And I find it interesting that apparently Impact Man reads the same news column that Blast Man writes for, and this comes from, like, not the game itself, but some outside material. But it's a neat way to make all of the Robot Masters interconnected. The pile driver isn't just useful as an attack, it also has some pretty neat applications for actually getting it through stages, through maneuvering across them. I don't know if I'd say it's my favorite weapon in this game, but it's still pretty good. And of course, like, all of the weapons are really good, I find. Now, it's understandable why people may not care that much for the Chain Blast. Heck, I myself didn't really care for the Chain Blast at first. But upon, like, practicing with it and getting the hang of it, I actually think it's a pretty good weapon. I can take out these Robot Masters in just about any order I want, and still have an amazing time doing so. Tundra Man's stage, by the way, has some amazing platforming because of the wind. It kind of reminds me of Tornado Man's stage, where certain sections in that also had wind. And with this, like, it's very fun to just blaze through this and just tear through anything. And with regards to shield weapons, I actually think that the acid barrier may even be better than the Jewel Satellite, so it's probably become my new favorite shield weapon in the classic Mega Man series. And another noteworthy thing about Tundra Man's stage is that it also has one of my favorite tracks in the game. I love this music, by the way. And as you can see, the mini-boss goes down ridiculously easy with its weakness if you use, like, the Scramble Thunder. It's ridiculous. So here we are fighting this guy legitimately, because, like, it is kind of cheap, and of course I went back to record some footage, because, you know, I want to show off what these mini-bosses are like without their weaknesses, and a lot of them are pretty fun. Each stage actually has its own mini-boss, by the way, which is interesting. I think that may be a first for the classic series. What you want to do is jump to the highest of these platforms and then jump over the Mecha Mamos stall, that's the boss's name, and then slide under it when it comes charging at you. But that's about it for it. With that out of the way, we're finally back on the main path. And of course, the acid barrier just tears through everything. The thing that makes it better than the Jewel Satellite in my eyes is that you can actually fire with the shield equipped. And that's really good. It allows you to, like, keep enemies at a distance and not have to, like, get up close and personal to damage them. It doesn't really matter, but for, like, the bosses that are weak to it, this definitely makes a difference, because there was definitely a risk of running into enemies with the Jewel Satellite, but not so with the acid barrier. Unless, of course, you naturally just get hit and you're hit with something that can pierce it, but still. Fun fact about Tundra Man, apparently he's designed by Dr. Cossack, or Cossack Robot Laboratories, which may mean that he actually was designed by Dr. Cossack, or by someone associated with Dr. Cossack. And a fairly tricky part is coming up, and I'm not sure whether the pile driver will help me or not, but I'll be holding on to it in case. And it was as if an occult hand had guided me through these tricky places. Or not. I can normally get through these parts without dying, but I guess not. Of course, then again, I am the Armond White of video game difficulty, so I guess I'll just resort to rush jet. But now we're here at Tundra Man.
Though Tundra Man was designed for land development and exploration in polar climates, he found a new obsession the first time he saw a TV ice skating championship. Since then, he has spent long years perfecting incredible ice skating techniques out on the polar ice flats. But since his audience is generally huskies, polar bears, and seals, he doesn't get many reviews. Tundra Man had a tougher-looking exterior when he was first sent to the North Pole, but he made some modifications to suit his graceful passion of ice skating. To him, the fact that his dazzling moves had been locked away at the North Pole and never witnessed is a crisis on the scale of global warming. Tundra Man eagerly awaits the day when he can show the world his exquisite skills. Manufacturer Cossack Robot Laboratories.
Yes, the fact that people haven't seen his moves in ice skating is on the scale of global warming. That's hilarious, I find. But if you use his weakness, the Scramble Thunder, he can go down pretty easily, but I want to show off his speed gear because it's very fun to dodge. I find all of the Robot Masters to be very fun to dodge and fight. And he's designed by Cossack Robot Laboratories. Presumably that means he has some connection to Dr. Cossack. And while I enjoy all of the Robot Master fights, personal favorites include Torch Man, Tundra Man, and Fuse Man. We'll get to Torch Man in the next video. And Tundra Man's weapon is awesome. It's kind of like Storm Eagle's weapon from the first Mega Man X game if you charge it up. And thus it's great for enemies both above and below you. But with the power gear, you can turn it into a freaking screen nuke! This makes it the best screen nuke in the entire series, I find, because it's not exactly a screen nuke. And that's pretty neat. I like that they give you the option to turn it into a screen nuke, but it isn't by default a screen nuke. But that's it for this video. This is the Mississippi King signing out, and in the next episode, we'll tackle the remaining 2 Robot Masters. See y'all then.